doing it, and then working out what we need to do to help them stop that behaviour. We can also find out if animals have health issues, because a lot of animals like to hide health problems because they don't want us worrying about it. And so they will hide pain and they will hide physical illness as long as they can. The same as when it's their time to pass. Often they'll stay a lot longer than they should because they don't want to leave us and they don't want us worrying about them. One of my cats told me literally that he wasn't going to kick the bucket till he was 17 because he didn't want me worrying about him. He didn't last till 17. And I'd said to him, look, I want you to stay as long as you can, but I want you to stay for your sake, not for mine. I'm happy to help look after you, but you need to let me know when it's your time to go. And he did. But I've had lots of conversations with animals just before they're about to pass away. So it means that they can tell their parents messages that they want to tell them. It means the parents can pass on their messages for them. And even things like end-of-life arrangements. So we can ask our animals, do they want to be cremated? Do they want to be buried? Do they want one of their favourite toys with them? These are all the things that animals can tell us. My first cat who passed away and came back again wanted to be cremated, and she wanted to be in a specific urn, and she wanted a brass urn, thank you. It had to be a specific shade of blue that was relevant for her galactic connections, and she wanted silver on it. And I thought, okay. She loved doing puzzles with me, and that's how she taught me. She'd give me clues and I'd have to work it out. She wasn't spoon feeding me. I had to work the answers out for myself. So I spoke to the crematorium and I said, this is what my cat has asked for. They didn't bat an eyelid, but they very kindly said they only had china porcelain urns, and they were a pale blue and they had a gold rim, so that wasn't what she wanted at all. But very kindly, the lady said to me, I've seen something like that on eBay. Now, I'd never bought anything on eBay, and I didn't really feel comfortable about buying a funeral urn because I wasn't sure whether it would have been pre-used or not, and I didn't want to get a pre-used urn. So I thought I would search animal funeral urns, and I found a business that had just opened in Melbourne 4 weeks before that called Furry Souls. And on the second page of their brass urns is a blue hand-painted enamel brass urn, the right shade of blue, inlaid with nickel flowers in a pattern called Forget-Me-Not. And that was exactly what she wanted, and she knew I'd find it because she said puzzles and I solved them. So she got her urn, and when she passed away, as I said, she was healthy and quite young, and I didn't know what had happened, but she'd actually had a heart attack for a reason. And she was telling me, am I? And I'm thinking, is she trying to tell me a crystal that she wants in the urn because she knows all about crystals? So I thought she might have been telling me mica, but I couldn't see why that was relevant. And then I worked out she's telling me myocardial infarct, and that's what the MI stood for, so just confirming it was the heart attack. And then she wanted me to put pink tourmaline crystals in her urn, and that helps with recovery from heart attacks. So again, confirming that I was definitely talking to her essence in spirit. But I was able to talk to her that same day that she passed, and I said, what did you do that for? And she said, oh, I needed a new body, in a tone like that. And I thought, what? And like as though everybody does that. And I thought, this is really weird. And then she said, stop being so sentimental, I'm coming back. And I thought, what? And she'd told her boy cat brothers what was going on. So they weren't pining, they weren't off their food. I was the one who was upset. And she told them that she was coming back, and she knew that she had an opportunity to come back in a specific kitten body, and that's what she wanted to do. So she just passed over so that she could come back again. And so she did. She told me what she was going to look like. She came home. Within a couple of days, she's lounging on the boys, using them as pillows, trying to eat their food, as though she'd never left. And it's just really weird. Everyone thought I was just, it was a weird, really weird grief coping technique to imagine that your cat could come back. But she's done that to teach me that soul reincarnation is something that really happens. And so I was able to process it. I've been able to write about it in my book. But more importantly now, I've been able to help lots of bereaved animal parents, because although not every animal comes back again, a lot of them do, and some of them come back multiple times in our lifetime. So I know a number of people now where an aspect of the animal's soul has been in 3 successive bodies with that human. So they go away, they come back, they go away, they come back. And I'm sure now, with the information my cats are downloading for me for my book I'm writing at the moment, that they have a soul contract with us to keep coming back and helping us with our life purpose. And I've got one lady whose dog is about to come back and have his 4th lifetime in a row with her in this lifetime of hers as a dog. So it's just phenomenal. And I just love asking, you know, do they know if they're coming back? Because if they do, they negotiate to find a body to come back in. And I know for some of you this is probably very new and out there, but I've had years now to get my head around it, so this is my everyday work now. But they negotiate with a soul in a body to swap into them so that they can come back to their family. So they have taught me they don't necessarily reincarnate into a baby animal when it's conceived. The soul can swap in at any stage afterwards. And some of our animals are so smart that they're actually waiting for their human parents to find them before they swap the soul in, because they have to negotiate and the soul that's in the animal has to swap out and go back to heaven again. But they do. They're so alert. It's just incredible. And some of these animals might be 3 years old. So that soul's been in that animal for 3 years, and then they just move out so that this soul can come back into their family. And particularly for those of you who have rescue animals, those animals know that you're very likely to be looking for a rescue animal when you're ready to open up your heart to getting another animal again. And so they'll deliberately find another rescue animal to come back in. And if something happens that the body that they were going to come back in is for some reason not available, then they work out another solution to come back to you. And I've had that happen as well. So one of the beautiful cats in the UK I spoke with had lived with his mum for 19 years and he passed away. And sometime later she adopted a cat from a rescue agency, looked completely different but had very similar yellow eyes. And he was very vocal, and Mum wanted to know what was going on, why he was so vocal. And of course he was trying to tell her who he was. So he had the soul of the first cat in him and he wanted her to know that. And animals have taught me it's an aspect of the soul that comes back. So there's an aspect of the soul that stays in heaven, and then a higher evolved aspect that comes back. Because once they've completed a lifetime, they've learned their life lessons, they've integrated them, and so they've moved along their ascension pathway. So then it's a higher evolved aspect that comes back, and they come back with a different life mission and different life lessons to learn. Anyway, this cat, this white cat with yellow eyes, absolutely gorgeous. Mum absolutely loved him. And I was totally shocked one morning to get a message to say that he passed away, and he hadn't actually been with her for very long. And I was just devastated, and so was Mum, because she hadn't had him back again for very much time, and he'd just gone. And for me, that was the first reincarnated animal that I'd seen being reunited with their mum, and then suddenly leave. So I spoke to him in spirit, and he said, "Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Leave it with me for a couple of days. I want to come back to Mum." So I contacted him 2 days later. He'd found a female rescue body with the same yellow eyes. And so I told Mum, he was able to tell me which specific rescue agency he was at. And so he's had 2 lifetimes as a boy. He's now come back as a girl. But that's the opportunity for him to come back to Mum. Sometimes they're a bit funny about coming back as a different gender, but they know that that's their opportunity, and it's more important that they come back rather than being a boy or a girl, so they just accept that body. And some of them like being in a different gender. I've just had someone's cat come back that was female, and she's come back as a boy, but she said he's so cute she doesn't mind coming back as a boy, so they adapt to it. But it's just funny, their personalities. And it's interesting that female cat who's now come back after being male twice had a skin condition, and so the rescue agency let her be adopted until she was better. In her first iteration as a boy, she also had a skin condition. So it's just interesting how some of these parallels play out. But one of the other fascinating things I've discovered animals do in spirit is give me a code word when they're talking to me. So it's a word that makes no sense to me, first time I experienced this, I was talking with a cat in spirit who'd actually been blind, and he died in very tragic circumstances, and his mum had lots of questions for him, and she was feeling a lot of guilt about his death, even though she wasn't there at the time when he passed away. And he was very happy answering her questions. And then partway through the conversation, he said, "Rumpelteazer." Now, I'd never heard that word before, and I thought, what is he saying? And then I thought, is he saying Rumpelstiltskin? And I just haven't heard him properly. But then that didn't make sense with what we were talking about. So then I just convinced myself I was hearing things, so I just ignored it. And I kept on talking to him. And then he said it again really clearly. And I thought, okay, he's giving me a message. I'm going to have to ask his mum what this means. And something made me think of it, and I sent her a message because I didn't know her. I just received a photo of him and the questions. And I sent her a message and I said, was he ever called Rumpelteazer? And there was silence for a while, and I thought, she's going to think I'm absolutely crazy. And then she typed back, oh, yes, I'd forgotten all about that. And apparently when she rescued him, he was living with a dog called Rumpel, and he used to get in trouble for teasing the dog. So he got called Rumpelteazer. He couldn't even see the dog, he was blind. But how clever of him to tell me that word, because there's no way that word got in my head apart from him telling me. You know, she lives in a different state to me, the mum. All I've got is a picture of this cat who's in spirit and the question she's asked me, and somehow that word got in my head. And it's now happened numerous times, so I'm used to the fact now that if I get a really weird word in the conversation, that's their code word and the human will understand. And so I was speaking with a little cat who'd passed away, and she wanted to come back as a dog. Now, it seems as though they do have some choice with what they come back as. She was adamant about being a dog. She wanted to go on walks, she wanted to go to dog-friendly cafes, and most importantly, she wanted to go on holidays with the family and not get left behind. So she told me she was going to come back as a Scottish Terrier. And partway through and she was going to be a boy, and she was going to be the colour Wheaton. Now, this is all very educational for me because I don't know anything a lot about dog breeds or colours. I didn't know Wheaton was a colour. But when I looked up terrier breeds, yes, Wheaton is a colour like white. So then she said tomatoes, and I said, can you explain that? And she said, no, it's a test. And I thought, okay. A lot of attitude comes out with the way they talk. And so I thought, I wonder whether she wants to eat tomatoes when she's a dog. And I thought, I wonder if it's safe for her to eat tomatoes. So I googled, is it safe for dogs to eat tomatoes? And apparently, yes, it is, as long as they're very ripe, only a small quantity, and no stems or leaves. On this page is a photo of a terrier with a bowl of tomatoes. And this kind of stuff just happens, and like you can't explain it. She's just told me a couple of minutes before that she wants to come back as a terrier. Then she said tomatoes, and then there's this page with a terrier with a bowl of tomatoes. So I thought, oh. So I saved the link and sent it to Mum, and she said, oh, Annie, tomatoes are my favourite thing, and the cat knows that. I eat them every day. So she knew that I was definitely talking to her cat, getting the word tomatoes, but for me it was also getting the confirmation about the terrier. And she has come back as that Wheaton Terrier, and she's come back into the house. She's played with her old cat toys, she's played with the new dog toys they've got them. The one thing she can't do in a dog body is to jump up on the bed at night to go to sleep and kiss her parents good night. So they had to buy her a little set of stairs. But as a cat, she would leap up onto the bed, kiss them good night, and then she'd have a very long bath before she went to sleep. As a dog, she does exactly the same thing. And they can just see so many of her cat behaviours coming out. And that's what a lot of people say. So even if the animal looks completely different when it reincarnates, whether it's a different species altogether or it's a different breed, there are things that you notice. And as they settle more and more into the house, you see more of those mannerisms coming out. Sometimes it's their naughty behaviours that you may have been hoping you weren't going to get back again, but it just shows you who they are. They're letting their soul be expressed. And I've actually asked them what they feel like when they come back, because they're in a new body. And they say it is like putting on a new suit. They've got to get used to the flexibility and the strength of their new bodies. I've had one of my cats coming back, and for ages I don't think he realised that he could actually jump with his back legs. So he was climbing with his front legs like a fireman up and down his poles in his scratchy palaces rather than leaping, but he was just exploring his new body, and he's a lot more athletic and muscular in this body than in his last body. So they do have to adjust to being in the body. But for your other animals, they won't necessarily recognise them straight away because they smell different. And animals really rely on scent. So if any of you have had to take an animal to the vet and they come home stinking of the vet hospital smell, your other cats sometimes don't recognise them. And I've had that with mine. And I think you've known each other for years and they're growling and hissing at each other as though they've never seen each other before. But that's because their scent message is so strong. But after that wears off, they will recognise them on a soul level. And it seems to be universal. Within 2 days, everyone knows who everyone is. They walk into the house knowing all the humans in the house, they know the animals in the house, they know where the toys are, they know where to sleep, they know where the food is. And I say it's as though they've just been on a temporary holiday, they've had a full body makeover, and they're back. And so they never left. And it's just bizarre. For us, it's bizarre for them, but it's just something that really happens. And it's just changed my world, knowing that this happens and being able to help so many people with the grief process. Because once you know that your animal's going to come back, if that's their destiny, it just changes everything. Yes, you miss the physical presence of your animal who's passed over, but there's this huge sense of anticipation and excitement, wondering what they're going to look like when they come back, how you're going to recognise them, what you're going to feel when you see them for the first time and hold them for the first time. Like, you know in your heart and you know in your mind you've just been wanting it for so long. And all these people say to me, you know, do they know how much I'd like to hug them one more time and kiss them one more time? And suddenly you see them in front of you and it's just, oh, the hairs are standing on end now. I had one dad in America who very sadly lost 2 of his dogs within 5 months of each other, and that was just so traumatic, and he was in a really bad place with deep grief. And so I spoke to his boy dog who'd passed away, who told me that he was coming back and he was going to be a rescue Samoyed dog and a female. And so the family started looking for Samoyeds around near where they lived but couldn't find any. And I said, I think you're just going to have to broaden the search and just look for Samoyed rescue organisations. They live in the middle of America. They found this dog in California and they used to live in California. So Dad was contacting the agency and, you know, wanting to connect with the puppy, but because of their rules, they don't adopt animals out to different states unless you come and do a meet and greet. They want to make sure that you're going to be a responsible parent, and Dad totally understood that. So he had to hop on a plane and fly to California, hire a car, drive up to the rescue organisation to go and meet this female dog. When he got there, this dog ran around the corner, jumped at him and kissed him. And the staff had never seen anything like that before, so she knew that he was there. He'd taken some of the old toys and the new dog was playing with the toys. Then they had a 1,900-mile trip back home again in the hire car, and she just sat in the console with her head against Dad's shoulder, bonding with him, just so happy to be home. And she's home, she's playing with her sister as though they've never been apart. She's sleeping downstairs in Dad's office being his buddy, which is what she used to do in her former life as a boy. And it's so funny because they keep calling her by his old name because they do look very similar, even though they're completely different breeds. And the really fantastic thing is, she's not a Samoyed, but she knew by telling him that he was at a Samoyed rescue place that they would find her, but she's not actually a Samoyed, she's a completely different breed. But she looks so similar to what she did last time, it's just amazing. And then I've got another client, also in America, who had a Saint Bernard, and he passed away almost 6 years ago. And a little while ago he told us he was going to come back as a Weimaraner female. And I thought, well, that's going to be very interesting because Mum's got 3 boy dogs. How's she going to get on with having a girl dog? But he didn't seem to mind. He was going to come back as this girl dog. Anyway, Mum found this rescue Weimaraner, but then the people who were adopting her decided to pick a family closer to them so that they could continue to see her. And so Mum sort of felt as though she was losing her dog all over again. And he said, don't mind, I'll find another way to get you back. And then not long later, he told us he was going to be coming back in a Saint Bernard puppy body. And he was going to be about 3 months old. And he gave us the time frame for them to find him. So anyway, Mum diligently family searched and found this absolutely adorable puppy with big blue eyes, and we worked out that that was the body that the soul of her dog was going to reincarnate. So her partner had to fly halfway across America and meet this puppy and bring him home. He sleeps in the same posture that the old dog did. So the old dog used to sleep with one paw tucked underneath his body, one leg out behind. Puppy sleeps in the same place. Puppy's walked back into the house, hopped up on the couch where the older dog used to sleep all the time. So all these familiar things, they just know where everything is. So Mum was really intrigued with his breed, so she actually had a DNA test done to find out what he actually was. He has 0% Saint Bernard puppy bloodline in him. He looks like a Saint Bernard. He was at the Saint Bernard rescue, but he's not a Saint Bernard. But he knew by telling her to look for him there that she would find him. So the animals are just incredible, knowing what information to give so that their families can find them. So yeah, it's just incredible. So I wrote my first book about animals in 2018. And that's part of my life mission, because I want people to understand that animals have souls, because that's not legislated in every country around the world. Even in Australia, I think it's only Canberra that recognises that animals have souls. So there's a long way to go for everyone to know that. So I want people to know that they've got souls, they feel emotions just like we do, they understand everything that we say, and they're with us for a reason. And understanding everything we say is interesting, because they do. Jump on the table or not. So if you explain why you don't want them jumping on the table, then they can use that information in their decision-making process. So I had someone contact me a few months ago whose cat was driving them nuts, running up and down their curtains, and she didn't want them. She kept saying, "Don't jump up the curtains," and they kept doing it. I said, "Tell them why you don't want them to." So she explained it. The cat stopped running up the curtains. So they do have choice and they can make decisions, but they do like understanding why we're saying things. But they also love us having a conversation with them. So even if you can't talk telepathically with them, they're understanding everything that you're saying verbally, and they just love you having a conversation. So if you forget everything I've said today and go home and just tell your animal that you love them and you're grateful that they're with you, that will change them, and you will see changed interaction with them, whether it's more attentive eye contact with you or showing you more affection. But they love knowing that you know that they understand what you're saying, and they don't care if you're telling them you're about to do the washing up and hanging out the washing and then you're going to mop the floor. They don't care what it is. They just love you having a conversation with them. And I know some of you have talked about animals that have anxiety issues, and a lot of them get separation anxiety, and they may have experienced that before they came to you. So they may have been abandoned, and so if you go out, it's triggering them, and they think that you might not be coming back. And so it's really important to tell your animals when you go out where you're going, what you're doing, and when you'll be back, because they understand the concept of time. So if you can tell them, I'm going to the shops, I'm going to get dog treats and dog food, I'll be back in 2 hours, they understand that, and then they can settle down. So particularly if you've got animals that get a bit destructive while you're out because they're so disturbed that you've gone away, try that and see what happens. And if you're going away, the same thing, you can say, look, I'm going away for 3 sleeps. This is the person who's going to be looking after you, and then I'll be back. They've heard you saying that you're going to be back, and that just really gives them so much peace then, because they know you've said you're coming back and it's not the last time you're going to see them. The lady with the cat running up the curtains contacted me a few weeks ago because one of her cats had changed behaviour with toilet etiquette, as I talked about earlier, and she didn't know why. So she didn't know which cat it was. She's got 3, so I had to talk to all of them and find out who the perpetrator was and why they were doing it and what Mum needed to do to stop them. Now, these 3 cats had been through 7 different homes before they came to live with her as their permanent home. So they've been in and out of a couple of rescue organisations and people's houses who've then surrendered them again. They'd lived some time in a caravan, and so they'd had a very unsettled life. They were really happy living with Mum, and suddenly Mum went away for 2 weeks. They had no idea where Mum was going. They had no idea if they were ever going to see her again. They were terribly upset. It just triggered all of that fear that they'd been dealing with. So I had to explain that Mum had gone away and that she should have told them, and she meant to tell them but she didn't. And they just wanted to spend a lot of time being cuddled by Mum and be reassured that really this is their genuinely permanent forever home and she's going to stay with them. And so they've now resumed their normal use of the litter boxes, and they're lapping up having all the love and cuddles with Mum. And reassuring them. So particularly with rescue animals, we don't know what they've gone through before. I can talk to them and find out what they're still dealing with. Sometimes the physical scars, if they've been traumatised, may have healed, but on an emotional level and a psychological level, they can be dealing with issues from years before, and that's all hidden. But they can share a little bit with me about what they're dealing with, and then we can get them help. And I've spoken to a couple of you already. There's a modality called emotion code, and I don't know if any of you have heard of it or if any of you are practitioners of it, but it is amazing. It's a technique that can be used with humans and with animals, and the practitioner works out which emotions they've got trapped in the body and how long they've been there for, and then they can release those emotions from their electromagnetic field. And I spoke with a horse who'd had 2 sessions done, and he said to me he had no idea what burden he was carrying with all of those emotions until they were released, and he was a different horse afterwards. So for me, I'm so grateful that we have these different modalities that are available now to help our animals so that they can lead a more fulfilled life. A horse I spoke to had some physical problems, and one of my gifts is clairsentience, so I can actually ask the animal to let me feel in my body what they're feeling in their body, and then I can try and help the parents to understand what's going on and what help they need. So we pinpointed what was going on with that, but then she also shared that she was holding on to grief, and apparently she'd had a twin who'd died in utero. Now I understand that twins in horses is very uncommon, and getting twins to actually survive is even rarer, and she was still dealing with losing her twin years and years afterwards. So I recommended to her parents that they look at this emotion code work as well. And I've spoken to a number of animals now that are still deeply affected by the grief of losing one of their animal siblings. So even though when we're dealing with the grief of losing an animal, we need to be conscious that our other animals are also grieving as well, and they will know that we need comforting because they can read our energy and know that we're sad, and they'll be trying to comfort us, but equally they'll be wanting to be comforted as well. So we do need to think about that. But animals are fascinating because they're so sensitive to vibrational frequency. They can read our frequency, and we normally vibrate at a certain frequency, and as soon as we get sick, our frequency starts to drop. Our animals know that, and they often know before we're consciously aware that we're starting to get sick, and so they'll instinctively come around and be more affectionate. They might lie on us, they might lie with us. They're willing us to get better because we're their world and they want us to be healthy. But they can also read our moods, so they're like a walking mood barometer. So if we're angry or upset or sad, again they'll be trying to comfort us because they're so tuned into us that they can do that. So it's just incredible. And then there's all the research that's been done on the physiological effects of animals, so that they're working behind the scenes. They can lower our blood pressure, they can lower our stress hormones, they can help us, interact more in society. If we want to go out and walk the dog and interact with other people, it helps stop isolation. There's a number of health benefits that they're doing behind the scenes, as well as some animals genuinely being healers. So they may have been a human healer in a past life, and they've come back in an animal body, but they can still do healing. So my cats love lying on me, doing cat reiki on me. I fractured my shoulder really badly a couple of years ago. One of my cats, who's got the loudest purr in the family, spent ages purring over my shoulder, and the research has shown that cat purring helps with bone healing, and she knew, and I got a lot of movement back very quickly, and my surgeon and my physio were very impressed. And my physio actually said, I'll have to get a couple of cats for my practice, and my dad said, rent him yours, get some money for them. So it's just amazing that they're so intuitive that they can do that. So sometimes animals have come to us to help us with our soul lessons, because they know what they are. Sometimes they've come to us so we can help them with theirs. But they can also take on different roles. So they may be a guardian. So particularly those of you with animals who get separation anxiety, your animals may be guardians. And if you walk out that door, they don't know where you've gone. And so they feel that they're going to fail as a guardian because they can't protect you, because they don't know where you are. So for those, it's really important that you do tell them what you're doing, where you're going, and when you'll be back. Some of them are teachers, and when we can talk to them telepathically, then they can teach us what they're here to teach. Animals are incredible. They remember their past lives, and they can tell me about their past lives. I spoke with Michael's cat Sirius to find out what the connection between him and Michael was, and I said, have you had past lives together? Is there a galactic connection? Or is it soul purpose that you're helping us with? And Sirius just said, all three. I thought, okay, brief answer, good boy answer. So I had to probe him a bit more to get some information. So he showed me an image of him being a pink and black pig with Michael in the 1800s in Midwest America. And so I looked it up, and yes, the Midwest in America opened up in the 1800s, and pig farming was one of the activities that they did. And then Michael told me that his parents had pigs. It's just fascinating the way these things happen. So, yeah, very interesting. But animals remember the past lives. They remember the lessons they've learnt. So when they come back in their new body, they still remember what they did last time and what they're helping us with. They know what our soul purpose is and what our soul lessons are. So that a lot of them are here to help us with that. And what else can I tell you? I'll ask if any of you have got any questions at the moment, since I've been talking for so long. I know a lot of you have been nodding your heads, so yeah. Does anyone? Yes, sorry, there's a question down the back. I can see a hand waving. Yes, rumple teaser. Yes. Oh, transmogrify. It's in the dictionary. It's genuinely there, but I've never consciously heard it before. So I actually asked her how she knew it, because I knew she didn't get it from me. And she said she's been an English tutor hundreds of years ago, and that's how she knew it. But she's certainly not got it from me. Yeah, and that's what I think, that because the animals have had past lives, they're, as humans, they're familiar with the words that were used in those eras, and that's why they're familiar with words that we don't use now. I had another cat I spoke with who loved splashing his water out of his water bowl, and a lot of them do, and his mum wanted to know why, and he told me. And I said, oh, would you like to tell mum anything else? And he said, does she want an existential expose on the physics of displacing a volume of water? And I just listened to that and I thought, wow, okay, he totally understands the question, because yes, you are physically displacing a volume of water with your paw, but to call it an existential expose, like, that's not commonly used either. That just made, they make me laugh sometimes with what they say. Yeah, because the transform was the word that the client said. So it's still meaning to transform, but just a more encompassing word. So I was just really impressed that she knew it, and it was a correct answer to the question, but just totally not what we were expecting. So she's pretty funny. Another word that she sent, she was supposed to send my client a word starting with A. And so instead of aristocrat, which what she was going to send, she said aristocat. So she changed it because she could. So they do let their senses of humour come through. I spoke with a horse who'd run into an electric fence and he'd burnt himself on his chest, so he was in pain. And he said to me, oh, that was shocking. Now, he totally understood the pun on shocking, and I thought, good on him. He's in pain, but he's got a sense of humour, it's intact. So, and then I had to speak to another horse whose mum had found a bridle which was somehow made so it meant that she didn't need to have any metal in the mouth, and so she wanted me to ask the horse if she'd like to try that. The horse started singing Alleluia. Now, I'd never had an animal sing to me, so I was really impressed because she actually sang it really well, but I thought how appropriate to pick that song to answer the question. So every conversation I have, I just count as a learning opportunity, because I don't know what they're going to tell me. and yeah, what they're going to pass on. Yes, I've got a question in the back. Yep.
So, with your ability, do you find that all animals relate to you differently? They've got an innate knowing of, hey, she can talk to me. Do you feel
I have to,
connection?
yeah, when I introduce myself to the animals, I have to get their consent to have a conversation because it's not a free, they have free will. I can't force them to have a conversation. I can't force them to answer questions. And it's really funny because a lot of them have never had a conversation with a human telepathically before. So it is really weird. And like I've had one go, weird, a human talking animal. Okay, you know. And then I had another one go, hey dude, I knew you were going to talk to me. So you just, all different accents, different tones, just like humans. So I just never know what I'm going to hear. But it's so frustrating for me because it's in my head. I wish there was a way I could record it so that I could give the humans the recording so they could hear what their animals sound like, because it's just amazing. A dog I spoke to the other day had a really melodic voice, and the family actually said they thought she was trying to sing with the high-pitched voice that she had, so it made total sense that she had this really musical voice when she was singing. So yes, Wayne. Sorry. Yep.
Most animals have been human beings in the past.
A lot of them have. A lot of them are very evolved souls. So some of them I've spoken to, including one of mine, has had lifetimes with me as a human, and he's had lifetimes with me as an animal. And I think that's why some of them know so much and why some of them are here as teachers, because they just understand the whole consciousness expansion, soul growth, soul expansion, what we're here on the planet for, and they can give us that information. And that's what my cats are actually downloading to me at the moment for this book that I'm writing, because some of this is stuff I've never heard of before, but they're just really familiar with it. They know it all.
Do you think that they are the same sort of soul that we are? They're in a different...
Yeah, so some humans I've spoken to can recall past lives as animals. I've had a couple of past life regressions done, but I was human in all of those lifetimes, so I've got no conscious memory of being an animal in a previous lifetime. That doesn't mean to say that I haven't been, so I don't know. But yes, a lot of the animals I speak to can tell me that yes, they've had human lifetimes. So like Michael Sirius has had a couple of human lifetimes with Michael in the past, and he's also been the pig with Michael, and now he's back with Michael as the cat.
Michael's never been a pig with Sirius, okay?
Well, he didn't tell me about that anyway.
Do you want to share about the lives we did? I don't mind.
The which?
About the 2 lives we had? Do you
So
remember?
Sirius said that he'd been Michael's brother in Atlantis, and he'd been Michael's father in Roman times. But he just didn't explain anything more than that. Like when he first answered the question and I said, you know, if you had past lives, is there a galactic question, or are you here to help him with a life purpose? He said all 3. And that was his answer, which was just very brief. So I had to keep asking more questions to get more details out of him.
That explains Michael's liking the togas then.
Do you like togas, Michael?
I like Roman men, if that's
And you also have that connection to the Pleiades. So he was
I
able
do,
to tell
yeah.
me which planet in the Pleiades they've got a galactic connection with. And it was a planet that I hadn't heard of. I resonate with Alcyone in the
I've got it
Pleiades.
here.
But yes, Sirius told us about another one starting with C.
Don't know if I can pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Ciliano. Ciliano?
It's on
Does
the
anyone-
right-hand edge of the constellation of the Pleiades.
Seleno, I
That's
guess.
one of the 7 sisters.
Yes, it is. So that's who he's in a lifetime he's had that connection with Michael, with that planet.
Andrew, did you have a question?
Can you tell us how or why it is that animals can recollect their past lives with ease?
I don't know. It's just something that they do, and that's what I'm writing about in the book at the moment. Like I had an animal tell me that they were with their human in Houston, Texas in 1919. Now, I didn't know whether Houston had been established in 1919, so again I had to do research, and it was established in 1836, so the animals know. I just think it's phenomenal that they can recall all of this stuff, and we don't.
Must be
Yeah.
the...
Can I just ask about animals that know when their person is going to die?
so tuned in, and I've heard lots of stories about particularly cats at nursing homes, and they'll go and sit on the person who's going to pass away next. So whether they're picking up a scent, if the person's body aromas change as they're getting ready to transition, or whether they're picking up something energetically that's altering because they're about to transition, that's a question I haven't asked them. But again, it's because they're so sensitive that they can pick those things up that we can't. So, yeah, I haven't asked them that specific question, but yeah, they're just amazing what they know. Yep. Yes?
I'm not quite sure how to put it. Do spiritual animals only come to spiritual people, or do they go to people that aren't always spiritual, and how do they get through to them?
Good question. So asking whether spiritual animals go to spiritual people or people who aren't spiritual. I've just had an experience recently talking to a dog in spirit who deliberately chose to pass away early because they knew they had an opportunity to come back in another body and spend longer with the family, but also because they know that their death is actually going to trigger accelerated awakening spiritually for the family, so that when the dog comes back again, they'll be working with the family again, but up at a higher level of spirituality. And the dog's smart enough to know that. So I put that story in the book as well. So, but as I say, these are things that I'm just learning now. Like some of this stuff I've known for years, but some of it is just recent. And I know I'm only the tip of the iceberg with what they've shown me and taught me. And they're just continuing to teach me, and I just feel because they're sharing all of this wisdom with me that I need to share that with the world. I can't keep it to myself. But yes, you've got a question here.
I just felt it was relevant to
Yep.
what you shared, because my cat is still alive, but he's not with me, so I do only get to communicate with him in spirit. But he told me that because I wanted to commit suicide in 2016, and the only reason I didn't was because I had to, because I couldn't leave him. So he was part, like, that was my big crisis of consciousness. And so he's always been my heart. He tells me he's like my heart anchor. Whenever I want to go off planet and don't want to be here, like, I can't because he's here. So we made that promise with each other that, like, we keep each other anchored to this planet. So I know that's like one of the things he gives to me, but I certainly wasn't, like, I got him in 2011. I wasn't, like, by any means tapping those capacities until like 6 years later. So yeah.
Yep. And it's really interesting with saying heart anchor, because some people describe their animals as their soulmate or their heart animal, and it's as though they know on an unconscious level that they've got this very deep connection with their animal on a soul contract, but consciously they're not aware of it, but they use that language to describe it. And what I'm being told now is that some of these animals do have a long soul contract with us. So my cat, Paddy, who was one of my original animal communicating teachers, showed me lifetimes of us in that Great Pyramid thousands of years ago. And he was an Abyssinian cat and I was a priestess. Now he's since had human lifetimes with me and he's had cat lifetimes with me, but our souls have been interweaving for thousands of years. We just
Are you
keep
tapping
coming
my
back.
energy field? Because that's how we go back to the pyramids and priestess times as well. We're probably sisters.
Yeah, probably. But it's really interesting that you know, some of them we do have this very strong, long connection with, and that's why some people find the grief process so difficult. And I've had people say to me, but you know, I've had tons of cats, I don't know why this one is so different, or I've had tons of dogs and I don't know why this death has affected me so much when the others did, but not as strongly. And when I delve into it, it's because they've had these relationships. So your dog might have been your child in a past life, or they might have been your father or grandparent or some other relation. I've spoken with people, we've worked out it's their grandparent's soul who's living in their animal now, or a parent's soul. One of the cats I spoke with also had bathroom etiquette issues and was very vocal, and Mum wanted to know what was going on. And I just got this intuitive message that there was a human soul in her cat, and he was trying to tell her who he was. So she went through a list of all the people that she could think of who passed away, and nothing resonated first name and a second name together, and all my hairs stood on end like they are now. And so that was the name. That was actually her first son who died prematurely. And he's found a way to come back to her in a cat body. And it was really interesting because the family were at a pet shop. They weren't actively looking for a pet. And her living son said, "We need to take this cat home." Now, he'd never met his brother. His brother had passed away before he was born. But on a soul level, he felt there was something important about this cat, and they had to bring the cat home. And the cat is really interesting with the toilet etiquette behaviour, because as the premature baby, he had renal problems. So he was trying to hint by doing the renal behaviours who he really was. And so once mum understood, then all of that behaviour stopped, and he was really happy because he was now able to live with his mum and his brother. So just unravelling these stories is just incredible. So yes, they can have been your children in the past, and that's why you feel this very strong heart connection with them. I've got another lady whose cat, a male cat, loves being on her chest and kind of nuzzling on her chest, and she said it's almost embarrassing, but he just loves doing it. We worked out that he was her lover in a past lifetime. In Roman times, I think, Michael. And he just thinks it's fabulous that he can get away with doing all of that behaviour now and not getting in trouble for it. So for me, I just love untangling the relationships and working out what's really going on, because once we know who they are, it just totally changes how we interact them and how they interact with us. Yes.
Just a question with animals. You've got animals that are pets, you've got animals that are wild, and you've got animals that are, farmed, for meat or whatever. Is there a difference you found in those animals, or have you had contact with them?
Yeah, so the lady's just asking that we've got animals that are our domestic animals, we've got animals that are being farmed for like agriculture, we've got animals in the wild, and what are the similarities or their souls. Once you can talk telepathically, you can talk to all of them. So I've spent a lot of time talking with animals in zoos, I've spent time connecting with animals in the wild. When I wrote my book, which is hiding behind me, so the bridge to animal consciousness, the last chapter I wrote in this book, I deliberately connected in with what I called a spokes animal from different species, so I could write about what was happening in reality with them, so the impact of global warming, trophy hunting, poaching, all of those kind of things, because I know what my thoughts are about those things, but I wanted to see what the animals wanted to say so that I could honour them and tell their story in their words. So I've got some of their messages in there, so they can talk telepathically. And like I'm here, I spoke to these animals in Africa, and I just tuned into the frequencies of elephants and said, would someone please like to step forward and answer these questions so I can include them in the book. Spoke to cheetahs, Cecil the lion who got killed in Africa, who got lured out of his protective park and shot by a dentist and then killed by someone else, but he was a protected animal. I've had a couple of conversations with him. So there's so much wisdom that they're carrying. Lions, I'm very drawn to cats, big and small. So I've spoken to a white lion in spirit and Cecil, and got information about why they're on the planet, because all these animals are here for a purpose. I've also spoken to animals about what they think about humans eating them, because I've been asked that question before. And animals, some of them aren't vegetarians, they do eat other animals. And some of them have told me that they feel it's a way of them being of purpose, to be providing us with nutrition, even though that upsets some people, and I acknowledge that. Some of them don't like their young being killed for food. The fish don't like the pain of hooks. So these are all different things that they told me. So yes, it's interesting getting their perspectives on that. But in the wild, I spoke to rhinos, and they're getting killed for their horns because people think that grinding up the horns helps recover you from a hangover. If you stop drinking, that would help you stop having a hangover in the first place. Your fingernails contain the same material as what's in the horn, so I'd like to start up a fingernail donation, and we can just send our fingernails somewhere and grind them all up, and all these people can pay millions of dollars for them and leave the rhinos alone. But in some of the reserves, they're actually preemptively removing their horns so that they're not going to be poached, because all they do is kill them and chop the horn off, and then their babies are abandoned, and that's terrible for the babies as well. But when I spoke to the rhinos, they said that their horns are their identity. And so if their horns are removed, that's really affecting them on a psychological level. Like they've got the trauma of being killed and, you know, leaving their infants abandoned, but that's affecting them as well. So it's just fascinating what they can tell us if we actually ask. So unfortunately there are some very awful circumstances for animals around the world, but through being able to talk to them, we can find out what's happening and we can help advocate for them. And I know there's a lot of work being done to stop trophy hunting, but my mission is to help people better understand and connect with their animals, and to respect them and work out ways that we can live in harmony together. And I haven't looked at my watch. How are we going for time, Michael?
We just passed, by the way. It took about 10 minutes, so
No, that's all right.
about ready whenever
We
you
will,
want.
yeah, you'll got some more questions and then we're going to have a little break. Sorry, yes.
Just with like whales and dolphins.
Yes,
You've connected.
I have.
One question is to do with the wind farms and how, if that's affecting things like whales and dolphins and in the water, because of the frequency and the dynamics that's happening with that, if it's affecting them in some way.
It's not a question I've asked them, but a good question. I know people are concerned about the seismic drilling and that's affecting the frequencies because animals rely on that like ultrasonic frequency to communicate. I've never heard about wind farming affecting them, so I can't answer your question, but I can ask them. Yeah.
Because there was a program with there was a swarm there, blue whales, and they found that they were getting lots of cancer. Whales was the blue whales in a particular area getting lots of cancer. They were finding them beached and that sort of thing. And they found, because it was research done over a long period of time, they found that it was the fairies in this particular area. They were quite a lot of fairies going backwards and forwards. So the sound of their engines were causing them stress, and that's what was causing a lot
Triggering
of
the
the deaths. Yeah.
So in case you can't hear it, the question was about beluga whales, and they've found an area where a lot of them are getting a higher percentage of cancer than expected, and they're relating it to having a lot of ferries in the area that's somehow affecting them. So whether it's pollution, motion,
The other one was with regards to dolphins, and we've got a lot of dolphin feeding tourist
Yep.
areas here, and there was a program just recently in regards to feeding the wild dolphins and the impact that as humans we're having on them and changing their behaviour, and that the dolphins that are getting fed are actually coming in and abandoning their young. Have you spoken to them in regards to that as well?
I haven't spoken to them about that. I know from when I had my experience with wild dolphins in Hawaii, they love being around humans and love connecting and the freedom. I was just sending them lots of love and just being open to whatever messages they sent. And I've spoken with lots of people who don't like interactions with animals, they don't like seeing animals in zoos, but I've spoken with lots of different animals in zoos and in places that I call conscious zoos, where they're actually aware of enrichment needs for animals, and you know, they're getting good quality food, they're getting medical care, they're getting water, they've got protection. Some of them are better off than animals in the wild when they're being affected by situations with interactions with mankind. So it is a very tumultuous question about, you know, where should animals actually be. But the problem that I see at the moment is if they're all in the wild, we're just taking up more and more land for agriculture and housing. So they're losing habitats, they're losing access to prey. So then they start preying on livestock because that's something that's available, and they're just driven to get food for their young. And so that's causing all sorts of problems as well. So, and that was another question I did ask in my book about, you know, what can we do to help solve the problems? And really it's a multifactorial, multi-agency issue that, you know, if we want to still keep having animals in the wild and we need to get money generated for communities with ecotourism, day being shot for sport. Like, they're not at a critical number, they don't need culling, but the government makes money from that, and all the agencies associated with those safaris make money from that. So if we're going to make a change, there's got to be a change in how people
Which
earn their
countries?
income. Some of the nations in
which-
Africa.
Which African nation? Which
I'd have to go and look them up, but that's the data I've read
Yeah, okay,
overall.
I would
Yeah, about 40 a
question
day.
that.
Yeah, which just is.
I know a fair bit about
Yeah.
hunting.
So I just think, you know, that's what those.
There's no conservation
Yeah.
without trophy hunting.
So, and if we want to change that, then there's, you know, what do people go, if they're so used to going and killing an animal, what do they go and do instead? You know, there's so many issues around that topic, and I don't want to talk about stuff that's really depressing because it's really awful for the animals as well. But I did include it in the book because it's a reality that our animals are dealing with. And so many people have said to me, I had no idea that was happening. So we can look at just the, you know, the surface level and